what is the real estate landscape in Southeast Asia like? Plus, a deep dive into who is Chris Marriott. You're watching Savills Shares. Welcome to Savills Shares. Today we have Chris Marriott, Southeast Asia CEO of Savills, joining us. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Jack. Good to be here.
Well, you have spent over 35 years in Asia real estate sector, of which 30 are with Savills itself. Tell us what drew you to this region and how it all began.
Not a difficult question. It was simply the bright lights of Hong Kong back in 1989. I had the pleasure of visiting Hong Kong on the way back from Australia, and I immediately fell in love with the place, got back to the UK, and started finding ways to move to Asia. Eventually got my dream and arrived in January 1990. And I suppose what was really compelling was, I suppose, youthful enthusiasm. I was 24, going 25. The opportunity, we'd traveled quite significantly with my parents, and it just seemed natural to travel once again. But the opportunity to do that with business and being employed with a salary seemed to be very exciting.
Well, you celebrated your 30 years with Savills this year. Congratulations and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So what is it about Savills that attracted you to lay down such deep roots?
I actually came to Hong Kong with a different firm. In fact, the firm that I started with in London was very fortunate to get an internal transfer. But after 5 years, the opportunity to join what was then known as First Pacific Davis was to leave Hong Kong and set up their business in Singapore. I was 29 years old, I suppose blinded by the opportunity to become the MD of a new business in Singapore. And it was really the sort of entrepreneurial spirit that they had. And that's really continued within both the Savills business and also the old First Pacific Davis business. I'd like to say slightly maverick. They were, and not in a risky way, but just that they were trying to break new ground. And I think the opportunity to join a firm, they were actually owned by a listed entity in Hong Kong. So to join a listed business that had access to capital, that was enthusiastic about expansion, was something that really attracted me.
And now looking back at the last 30 years, what were some of the biggest challenges or turning points for you?
You look at Asia over 30 or 35 years that I've been here, and we've been through numerous peaks and troughs. I look back and 97, Asian financial crisis, dot-com boom and bust in the early 2000s, the financial crisis. We've had riots, handovers. So it's been fraught with change, but the backdrop to it has been an incredibly youthful population across places like China and Indonesia, and a surge of growth. So I'd consider myself to be incredibly lucky to have been operating in an environment where really the engine of growth has been Asia. And I think of what happened in China over the last 20, 25 years, it's been extraordinary.
Right.
And we're now seeing that sort of growth coming through in Southeast Asia and South Asia and in India, but certainly looking at somewhere like Vietnam, that youthful culture, the drive for business growth, just very compelling, very exciting to be part of it.
Savills Property Management is also celebrating its 30-year anniversary this year as well. Now, how did the merger of Savills Singapore and CKH Strata Management come about?
I think, number one, I'm incredibly proud of what we've been able to achieve with the team there. But also, looking back, Chiang Kok-kong was known to be in the market for a partner. But most people expected him to, they were expecting to buy 100% of the business and for him to retire. I had one simple question of Chiang Kok-kong, which is, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to continue working for as long as I possibly can. And again, it's a very I wouldn't say Asian culture, but the belief in really working and legacy. We still employ Chan Kok Hong for a day a week. He still gives us plenty of advice. He's in his mid to late 70s. So it was that simple question of really thinking about the existing owner's desires. After all, we don't own the business before you buy it, so it's really down to them what they wish to do. So we were able to acquire 51%, and then we built up our interest over time to 100%. And I have to take my hat off to the management team there. Chan Kok Kong, obviously, to begin with, but Winnie Wong, who was already in the business. She's grown up to be a fantastic leader of Savills Property Management. And that now is probably the leading business in strata property management in Singapore. So huge result for us. But also a source of immense pride for all of us that will work with the business or within the business to grow it. So very pleasing.
And what are some of the biggest highlights for you think, for Savills Property Management?
It's really the growth. So, we sort of look at it and think, how can we take an industry that's been doing strata property management the same way for 30, 40 years, and how do we start to improve it, improve the talent, help the talent grow that business? So back in just post-COVID, we had a transformation program where we created a shared service function within the business. And that really was the interface for the leadership and the leaders for each building, the building managers. And it really took the weight off both parties and delivered what was the sort of solution to making the job a lot easier to do. And I think, with that transformation, it wasn't just structural, it was also digital. So we've moved into digitizing a lot of our processes, a lot of our documents, procurement, contract management. And again, working to transform businesses that we've owned for many years and help them be match fit and future ready is probably as important as finding new businesses.
Well, Savills has built a strong recurrent income base through property and facilities management. Why is this balance between recurring and transactional income so vital for your business model?
Yes, I go back to the volatility of the markets. And, with all emerging markets, you tend to have feast and famine. And obviously, when the markets are flying, the transaction businesses do fabulously. But when the markets have a downturn, whether that's politics, financial, you name it, then the brokerage teams, the transaction-based businesses tend to suffer. So we had this philosophy that we're a full service agency or full service real estate advisory company.
Mm-hmm.
And to balance out that sort of the volatility in the agency income, we're very keen to build an underlying base of recurrent income.
Mm.
And naturally, property management, facilities management offers that solution to us. So there's been a really strong core belief that we blend our recurrent income and our agency income to get the right match for booms and busts in the market. It's really given us a robust strategy, not I wouldn't say for survival, but for growth. Because what tends to happen is when the agency markets suffer in a downturn, we're able to hold on to the bulk of our agency, the talent in our transaction-based business. And we're able to sustain that because of the property management recurrent income. And then when the market grows, we're already match fit to grow into that evolving agency market as it recovers. Now, those that are purely focused on transaction tend to have to take the hatchet to the business and reduce costs dramatically. So, they tend to, it's not a flesh bone, they cut down to the bone. And when the market recovers, it's much more difficult for them to start hiring. And also we don't have a hire and fire philosophy. The belief is that, it's a joint venture with our staff and our colleagues to make sure that we respect, we hire good people, we retain them. We may have to flex during tough periods, but really retain the staff, retain the best quality staff, and grow after a downturn.
It's good philosophy.
It's worked.
Well, expansion has been several strategy, and part of it includes acquisition of external organization such as Absolute Maintenance Services, also known as AMS. When did you first know that you wanted AMS as part of Savills family?
We obviously built up more and more confidence as we became more successful with the Strata management, Savills property management. We then expanded into the facilities management services. And under Robin, we've been able to expand and build a fairly strong FM business. The nature of the contracts has been changing from one of an agency where we advise the client who to contract other services out to, predominantly in the cleaning, engineering, and security sector. And we could see that the contracts were changing to all-inclusive contracts. So we were becoming the principal IFM contractor and subcontracting out to other services. So there was a belief that actually if we had those services, we could control the quality of service and the cost of service. So we looked at what an owner required in terms of contracts to manage property. And as I said, simply, if you said 4 times 20%, 20% is property or facilities management, 1/4 is cleaning, 1/4 is engineering, 1/4 is security. You have some other services in there that make up 10 to 15%. So it seemed obvious to us to buy into the cleaning services and the engineering services. So they're the areas that we're growing most rapidly, so that we can effectively control the spend for an end user, and whether that's an investor, not-for-profit, or even government, and really have the skill sets to understand the practicality of how a building operates. We won't go into security services. There's it's heavily controlled in Singapore. There's no need for us to attend to that area. But the rest, I see a real opportunity for us to grow the business, but also to really understand, as I say, the nuts and bolts on behalf of the owner.
Now, I know that you have always been very excited about technology because I myself learned a great deal from you in that aspect. So, how do you see tech and digitalization as being relevant to the real estate business?
First, thank you for the compliment. I think you're probably saying I'm the oldest geek in the room, but yeah, look, it's well known that I have a passion for technology. From very early on to sort of understanding databases and how we could use it. And I think now we're sitting sort of at a different interchange where we're going from what has been developing in the apps market into the artificial intelligence. This isn't something new for us. We've been, as I said, we've been looking at how we structure technology into our business. So when we did the restructuring of the property management business, we're very focused on building technology into that new structure. And we're not talking about fresh or dynamic technology. We're talking about practical stuff that helps our staff execute their work. And I've always talked about trying to create a digital moat between Savills and its competitors. What do I mean by that? It means that, let's say we have a property management staff join us. He sits in his tech cockpit. He can procure, he can contract manage. He knows what's coming up in terms of jobs. He knows the performance levels. And this is being fed to him in an easy, digestible format where he can brief the client on almost anything that's needed by that client. My hope is that if he then moves to a less technically capable company, that he starts to think, well, I can do 3 times as much at Savills and it's easier. So creating that digital moat. Again, very lucky in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit of Savills and their preparedness to back people like me who are equally entrepreneurial to go into the market and look at opportunities that may fit with us from a tech perspective.
Right.
I suppose one of the highlights was the acquisition of a small interest, 20% interest in a company called iCondo, very locally based business. It was a startup business in the residency management arena. There were competitors in the market. We knew that we wanted to have something of that nature. And I looked long and hard at building it internally at Savills. And then I realized that actually it's a marketplace application. And we are a member of the market, but we're not the marketplace. And so we slightly switched from build and operate this application ourselves to joint venture. And we, as I say, we have a minority stake. It's a plug-in for us. As it is, it's an independent application. All of our competitors and other operators, developers can use it. It's a plug-in that is an essential interface between the occupier or owner and the building. And there was a gap in the marketplace, and now iCondo probably is 700 plus buildings. So it has a dominant position in that marketplace, and they've been scaling their product line here in Singapore, and it's my sort of vision to then start to take that offshore, so they broaden out their geographic spread as well as their product spread. So all credit to the management and leadership and development teams at iCondo, because genuinely we've had very little to do with the development, but it is a great add-on to what we do in terms of running the building infrastructure.
Right.
And there's a dividing line between the building infrastructure and the building interface with the occupiers and the residents.
And where does AI fit into this whole grand scheme of things?
Yes. I don't think you're the first person to ask this question. I mean, we are inundated with talk on AI, AGI, and the likes. And I think we've got to, number one, embrace it. Number two, be very careful with it. I think there is massive opportunity, and I think what it's doing is it's democratizing technology. So the ability for people to develop their own software or work with engineers to scope software rapidly is becoming much more accessible. The ability to have a buddy, a tech buddy in your job, so someone that is fed with all the data, all the know-how, has access to the latest and greatest, but is at your beck and call, will change the dynamics of the way people do business. And I think there's some fairly well-published sayings that AI won't take your job. It's the person that can use AI that will take your job. So I would encourage everybody to have an understanding of what it can do, what it does do. I, true to form, as the oldest geek in the room, have built my first agents, produced my first workflows. Yes, they're rubbish. No, they're not going to be published. But what it's doing is breaking down what can be done for me. And so what can we do within Savills? And I think one of the challenges is to break down the barrier between those that know how the industry works at a technical level and those that wish to develop technology for it that don't know how it works at a technical level. And I think that what we're going to find is that the gap between those two people will narrow and it will become more accessible. So I think the revolution will happen quickly. It's going to be incredibly important to be ready. And that means, do we have all the data consolidated in a clear and manageable structure? Do we know the job scopes down to a great detail of each of the key levels in our organization? So in tech term, can we create the personas? And do we have the knowledge and know-how? And once you get those foundational layers going, then you can start to build on top, and your artificial intelligence and all the technology that you can throw at it will work much better. If you think that you can just put AI in without those foundational layers, you'll find that it won't do what you want it to do.
You obviously have a lot of passion in this whole AI's landscape.
Yes, my weekends are spent sometimes deep in N8N, Lovable, and many other different applications trying to see how they work.
I won't pretend I know what you're talking
Yes,
about.
there you go.
All right, let's turn our attention to Southeast Asia. What do you think are some of the unique market dynamics of Southeast Asia that the global investors and newcomers often misunderstand?
Southeast Asia is really a blend of very different countries. You know, the culture, the people, the background, very different. So you look from Vietnam to the Philippines to Indonesia to Malaysia to Thailand, Singapore, all culturally very different. Business approach to business very different. Corporate ownership, financing structures. So I think the three tends to be the three same challenges. What is the legal structure construct of owning land and properties? What is the financial structure? And what is the framework for real estate advisory practices? And they define how you do business in the real estate world. It's probably one of the more exciting parts of the world at the moment. You know, I don't need to talk about global politics. It's fairly well published, but the relationship between Greater China and Southeast Asia is building rapidly. The demands on Southeast Asia to become a manufacturing center. You know, traditionally people have thought about training shoes and t-shirts and the likes, but you know, some of the highest technology is being built in Vietnam. You know, car manufacturing in Thailand, and that doesn't mention the level of commodities that are in these countries. You know, they're commodity-backed economies. As soon as they go into a move away from primary production into higher value production, you'll see them bloom and blossom. So you take somewhere like Indonesia, which exports its crude oil. If they start to catalytically crack that oil and refine it, then they're going up that food chain. And because of the base level that they're coming from, the economic impact will be rapid and dramatic. So I think, you know, it's not without its challenges, but I think incredibly enthusiastic for the future and the near future. And that's really supported, I suppose, by the underlying fact that they're all very youthful populations. So, and a youthful population drives the economy, and healthcare is improving, especially post-COVID. So combine youthful population with relatively good healthcare, and you can see why the demands, they will demand that the economy improves, not that the economy improves because of them. They will be pushing it and demanding it.
Well, looking at the current economic climate and global politics that you brought up, where do you see some of the biggest risks and opportunities for real estate in Southeast Asia?
Risk is now built into the system. So I would question anybody that didn't operate their business with one eye on constant risk. What we're talking about is change. So you're not managing the risk. By nature, you can't manage the risk. You can mitigate it, but you can be match fit for change. And so you've got to be agile. So I think this is what I constantly work with the teams around Southeast Asia and the leadership teams, is really focusing on how they manage that change and how they're agile in the face of what may be coming down at them. And you look at somewhere like Vietnam, you know, they potentially their tariff rates were going to be horrendous. They go into immediate negotiation with the US. They're managing the position, but then they're also looking at what other trade relationships can they have with Japan, with Korea, with China, with Europe, UK. So I see different, you know, people will respond And if they're match fit and they can respond quickly, then they'll build up new trade relationships. It may not cover the loss on other trade relationships, but it'll certainly cover a large portion of it.
You have lived and worked in both Hong Kong and Singapore for over 3 decades. How have these cities shaped your worldview, personal growth, and leadership style?
And we go back to the beginning. It was the bright lights of Hong Kong that
Mm.
attracted me to come to Asia. I think initially it was one of being open-minded. Hong Kong, the pace of life, the way they deal, the velocity of business taught me how to balance work and life, take a balanced view to what would make money, what might not make money, not be distracted by things that would not be productive, both in personal life and also business life. So I think that first and foremost taught me to say no. So to really pick and choose what I thought I wanted to do, both business and personally. Then moving down to Singapore and having a family. First 2 children were born in Singapore. I suppose it taught me a slightly more moderated approach to life. Singapore in the 90s was a little quieter than it is today. That was slightly cut short because I was asked to go back to Hong Kong after 2 years to help restructure the business. And I suppose that brought me back down to earth and really sort of focus on how do we manage a business through really challenging times. The financial crisis, the Asian financial crisis was brutal. And I think, it was brutal in Hong Kong and Singapore, but it was even more brutal in places like Malaysia, Indonesia, and South Korea. We had currency collapses, we had riots. So it was a really challenging period. So it was not just the business, it was the environment. So that was the sort of cold shower, but that was, I think, where we learned more about the balance of recurrent income, the importance of recurrent income, and how to deal with the agency side during a downturn. And I remember very clearly as we came out of the Asian financial crisis, we had the quickest growing agency business. And that was because we'd buckled down, we'd taken, all the leadership took salary cuts first. We led by example. So yeah, I think that was sort of sharpening up my act. Then coming back 15 years ago to Singapore to build out Southeast Asia, I suppose the art of diplomacy, really understanding and having to work with multiple cultures, legal structures, employment structures, financial structures, real estate markets, and sort of really understanding how to support the local businesses and to get them to really help us understand the local market so that we could help them grow their businesses and where the opportunities were. So yeah, it's been, incredibly instructive to have traveled this region. The family and I have had an immense amount of fun seeing what Asia has to offer, both in the cities and in the countrysides and in the oceans. And it's been supported by phenomenal economic growth. So, I couldn't have asked for much more.
So what has been a setback or disappointment that have left an impact and valuable lessons for you?
With a conversation like that, it's always, you talk about all the great things and all the excitement, but sometimes you do have to be slightly introspective. I suppose one of my great learnings has been that it's a human business. We're absolutely reliant on collegiate staff, employees, colleagues, and it is a team business. We always talk about our assets have 2 legs and can walk out the door any day. So it then becomes a real case of how you work with these people. And I suppose when you talk about challenges and disappointments, getting people to do what you want them to do. You can see what needs to happen. They may disagree. So how do you act in a diplomatic fashion? How do you, especially cross-cultural? So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. I suppose disappointment's always when you've put so much energy into these people
Mm,
and they get a job from a developer or an investor or an investment fund.
mm,
You sort of you bite your lip and you say, fantastic, well done. They've been recognized for the skill sets.
mm,
Why didn't they stay with me? So there's always that
mm,
disappointment when that comes, but it's something that should be celebrated.
mm,
I see us as a field of on lice in terms of where the opportunity lies for them.
mm,
And we celebrate that.
mm,
And I think we shouldn't be cynical or
mm,
depressed about it.
mm,
It always hurts at the time,
mm,
but it's there. I suppose they're the things that um, challenge me. Was probably slightly at a more emotional level than
mm,
a corporate level,
mm,
because one thing that's for sure is that Savills is now such a significant business that it can suffer the blows,
mm,
and it's not all about one individual.
mm,
We've built a business that is robust.
mm,
It's a broad church of industries. It we can employ valuers, property managers, project managers, brokers, agents, advisors. There's something for everybody in there. Um, and as I say, it can, if individuals leave, we can regrow. So
mm,
it's not, we're no longer susceptible to one or two people departing.
mm. With all that you've talked about and all that's happening, how do you stay motivated and remain enthusiastic in this industry, for nearly 40 years?
Yes. Yes, I passed the Rubicon. Not difficult. I'm a naturally positive person. I have a hunger for, as you say, technology and what's happening in the
Mm,
industry, future proofing it. So I tend to get out of bed and not think about today being the day after yesterday.
mm,
I tend to think about today being the next day of the rest of my life
mm,
and try and go with it with the youthful enthusiasm as getting in and seeing what else we can do.
mm,
Again, very lucky we work in an industry where we have lots of young enthusiastic people. It's number one, slightly addictive to be around that youthful sort of enthusiasm.
mm,
For me, it's not a challenge.
mm,
um, Maybe talk to my wife about the challenges
mm,
of having that sort of boyish enthusiasm all the time.
mm,
It's a fun business. As I say, it's a broad church. You can be switching from owner, massive institutional investors to small would-be owners to not-for-profit organizations to government. So the range of characters you meet, the
mm,
nature of business you do,
mm.
there's something for everybody.
And what would your advice be for somebody who's considering entering the real estate business?
I'm guilty of having persuaded my son to come into the industry
Mm,
on the investment side. It's an industry that has not been commoditized. So you talk about sort of investment, the relationships that you build up can't be commoditized. Um, that sort of creative thinking, you need to put deals together to really answer the question of an owner.
mm,
Not every owner has the same problems or
mhm,
aspirations or intent. Somebody will buy a building and they want to convert it to a hotel.
mm,
Others will buy it and say, I'm going to leave it as an office. So you're always working to answer questions. And I think it's that ability to think, number one, talk to and understand and listen to the client,
mm,
come up with creative ideas backed by a very solid delivery platform. For those people that want to come into an industry that has a very broad church of services, that they can be the orchestrator of those
mm,
services, I think it's still a very exciting industry.
mm. Okay, let's move on to a little bit more personal um, front for you. tell us something that most people do not know about Chris Marriott.
Oh dear. So something that they don't know about Chris Marriott. It wouldn't be a secret to people in my family, but I do like watercolor painting.
Mm.
And for a man that's known as sort of slightly burly, heavy into his tech, to then pick up a paintbrush and do the delicate strokes of watercolor painting, I can often lose myself. And clearly, when you're doing art, you can't think about other things. You're very much in the moment. So I find it a very peaceful and thoroughly enjoy my watercolor painting.
Any plans for an exhibition?
No. Let's say I enjoy them the most.
Well, I do remember in one of our earliest interaction outside of work was when we bumped into each other at the Affordable Art Fair. With,
Yes.
there you were there with your wife then. So, and you were buying a painting for your mother. So art has been this underlying passion.
Very much. I think, and in fact, that was a Thai farmer who had been farming his land for years and then decided to start painting. And I looked at it and thought, those exact colours, the freeness of his strokes, just reminds me of my mother. So and affordable is the word in Affordable Art Fair. It was affordable piece of art that I bought for my mother. But yes, I thoroughly enjoy art, collecting art. I'm not into what I would call art for art's sake. It's really about whether you like it or not. So we've got a huge range of different art from Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, and you look at our house and you often think, how does this all fit together? So I think we need a bigger house.
Yes. And who would you say has been the biggest influence in your life, be it work or personal?
Normal speech is, my parents, and obviously they've been a huge influence, partly because my father was in the Air Force and we travelled. My mother supported regardless of success, but in looking at business, and this is a business podcast, I'd look at probably 4 or 5 business leaders who have been my bosses. And in the late 80s when I started, my first boss and my third boss, so Jenny Greenwood and Jill North, both the first 2 equity partners of a real estate firm in London. They were fighting for their position in the firm. So when they had a young gun like me, they would have to chisel quite hard to make sure I fitted into their I suppose their vision of what success was. And then coming out to Hong Kong with Nick Brooke, now a youthful early 80s, one of the patriarchs of real estate advisory, real estate in Hong Kong. And then on the move to First Pacific Davis, Savills, FPD, Savills FPD, David Davis and Godfrey Blott and Mike Lavin. These are all very personable characters, but with real sort of, I suppose, with real vision as to what can be achieved. Never afraid to take on the biggest of challenges. So they just because you're little doesn't mean you can't. And I think, being fashioned by 2 leading women to begin with was probably the best thing for a very youthful, energetic individual. But then having the character and the can-do approach has really helped me to, strive forwards, whatever comes.
So what do you see it to be your personal legacy that you want to leave behind, not just at work itself, but the global stage?
Well, first of all, I'm not ready to go. So, but I think legacy is quite interesting. I think part of me says that I've built businesses, built teams. I ironically, when I came to Hong Kong at the age of 24, 25, I was leading a commercial leasing team
Mm.
of one and had to build that up. So I've been sort of building teams for 35 years.
Mm.
And I think each one of them has a little mark on the legacy I've left.
Mm.
But I think, and it sort of comes back to the AI and what I'm talking about, foundational layers. You're getting things organized, making sure that we have our knowledge, know-how in place. If you think about it, what better thing to do than to leave all of the know-how in place for everybody in the future to build on? Because that knowledge won't go away. Yes, it can deteriorate over time if it's not added to, but I'm not saying that there'll be a Chris Marriott AI to help you. I'm saying that, making sure that all of the leaders share and impart their knowledge and really build that into the system so that we grow, we retain the data, we retain the knowledge, we improve the personas, the profile of the job scope, so that the next person that comes in has a much easier task and can be much more effective. If you look through history, the human race has been very good at destroying knowledge, right from the libraries of Alexandria. So we've seen knowledge be destroyed. You think of a legacy, keep the knowledge in the business.
Well, I wouldn't rule out the Chris Marriott, advice app as yet.
Steady.
All right. Now, given the chance to go back in time and speak to your 21-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Gosh, 21 years old. I was probably just starting my first job after having got my degree. Don't change anything. It's been that exciting. It's been a thrilling ride. Sometimes scary. Don't change anything. We've just had a wonderful time.
Well, thank you, Chris. It has been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us on Savills Shares. You can catch all the episodes on YouTube Music as well as Spotify. Until the next one, God bless. This podcast is for general information only and should not be taken as professional advice. Savills accept no responsibility or liability for any direct or indirect or any consequential loss from the use of, reference to, or the reliance on this podcast or its content.